At the center of the universe, at the border between the light and the dark, stands Castle Grayskull. For countless ages, the heroes of Grayskull have defended the universe against the forces of evil. Walk through the Hall of Living Pictures and learn the history and mystery of the masters of the universe. Dive deep into the mythology of Eternia, Etheria, and more. For those who know the stories of Grayskull will come the power to be supreme, the power to be all-knowing, the power to be Legends of Grayskull.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us here on Legends of Grayskull. It is time now for episode 2.5. As many of you know, we discuss a show for the whole episode, and we discuss a book for the half episode. Let me introduce ourselves. I am Matthew Duch, here with Shawn Scavarna. I'm going out of order today. This is a podcast where we discuss He-Man, She-Ra, Masters of the Universe, Princess of Power, New Adventures, Netflix shows, comic books, golden books, kid stuff books, record books, DC Comics, NBC Comics, who am I missing? Marvel Star Comics, and so much more. Shawn, how you doing today?
I'm lifting a heavy book, and I told Matthew before we started taping, I will be the most powerful man in the universe after this episode, because this omnibus that I will show off really quickly, there we go, this is enough to kill at least a couple kittens. No, I do not recommend killing or hurting animals, but you get the idea. It is a heavy book, and I will be holding it to discuss our 2.5 episode to Tempt the Gods, which is one of the first DC comic book Masters of the Universe adaptations.
I want to say they had that one shot that was Fate is the Killer, and that was like inserted as like a bonus into other comic books the month it came out.
Yeah.
And then I want to say the Superman crossover came next, and DC Comics Presents 47, and then this 3-issue miniseries. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I see, now you know more than I do. I remember the Superman He-Man one when I was a kid, and unfortunately I never had a copy of that. And then this I remember more because it was a 3-parter. Mm-hmm. And I never got the first issue. So this is actually the first time I've actually sat down and checked out this first issue. And here's the thing. Like, before we even start.
Well, hang on 1 second before we even start that. So you're saying you didn't have any of this 3-parter, or you saw some of the 3-parter but not this first issue?
I remember having the 2 and 3 issues,
okay.
And I really wanted the first issue, but this was before comic book stores were even a thing. So when you missed it, you missed it.
Absolutely.
Pretty much. When I was a kid, just like TV shows, if you weren't there to watch it when they aired, you missed it.
Absolutely.
So that was a huge part of me wanting to get the omnibus when it was solicited, because, you know, here's all this stuff that goes back to my childhood, as well as the new stuff that DC's putting out. So why not? And the thing about this, looking at the art, mm-hmm. which to Tempt the Gods, it was written by Paul Kupperberg. Penciler was George Tuska. Inker, Alfredo Alcala. And of course, for anyone mini comics wise who started the line before Filmation hit, that's probably going to be one of your happiest places, is anytime Alfredo Alcala decided to do the art for a He-Man story. That always sent it over the top. It didn't matter, like the weakest one that I remember mini comic wise for him was the Obelisk, and that wasn't his art, it was the story was a little, it just kind of filtered out at the end. Mm-hmm. And it, for me, it wasn't one that really, like, wow, I remember that, but his art still worth the price of admission. So him being involved in this makes me very happy. And actually, as a comic book fan, the letterer in this issue is Adam Kubert, who his father is Joe Kubert, that has the Kubert School in New Jersey, and they are like a really big like starting point for anybody wanting to break into the comic book industry. So it's kind of cool that like somebody connected to a legend other than Alcala also had his hand in this issue. But this is to me pure. This is just pure masters of the very beginning of the 80s and the beginning of the line, the story. I'm really glad I got to check it out finally, and it's like, man, looking at like the image, the first image we open up on here. Let's see here.
Now yours is they recolored that, or it's just because of the different paper.
I'm sure they probably recolored it.
Because I held mine up earlier, and you can see it's much less vibrant. It's much more, I guess you could say newspapery. I mean, I know they used a different paper back in the day than they use nowadays. A much less. Yours is very glossy. It's got that glossy paper that comics use now. These are very much like newspaper. And I know there's probably some fans out there like, oh my God, he's touching the comic.
How dare you?
Yes, I am. I get comics not to collect and archive them. I get comics so that I can read them. And to me, part of the fun is being able to go back and hold the floppies. It's fun for me. It gives me a feeling. Honestly, I'm trying to track down, not the side tangent too much, but some of the DC, the newest run, the Eternity War and all that. I bought some of that digitally because our comic book shop is not very accessible. I have to drive almost an hour round trip back and forth. So if I'm not in the area, I don't get that. Like, quick plug, Masters of the Multiverse #3 comes out today. I'm not going that way today, so I will not get it. Same thing you said. So once it's gone, though, it's gone. So I had to purchase some of them digitally because I just didn't make it to the comic shop in time. And right now I'm going back through and I'm collecting the floppies because there's a big difference to me between reading them in the floppies versus reading them digitally versus even reading them in the trade paperbacks or like the omnibus. I mean, it's still cool, don't get me wrong, but to me, if I have my choice, give me the individual floppy. As Shawn's thinking the same thing right now as he's done holding that already.
I need a moment because, man, my left, I'm going to be like Fisto. My left arm is going to have this huge bicep by the time we're done with this, and my right one's going to be wimpy.
Yeah, that is a huge book, and it's interesting that as I notice you're holding it, that the early DC stuff is in the back. So what kind? Give a little quickie review of that omnibus. How's it structured?
Basically, the structure is you get. I really need. Hang on here. I need something to at least sit my foot up on so that I have something to sturdy myself. Yeah. All right. So the beginning of it is a lot. It starts out with some of the online books. Like one of the first images you're going to see is Sir Laser-Lot.
So it starts with the He-Man, the Eternity War arc, because those digital copies were they were set before the first issue of the ongoing.
Yeah, and then you get into the storyline where it was one issue was done by James Robinson, and it has this cover, the
He-Man
first
and
issue,
the Masters.
And then
the miniseries, and then the ongoing.
And then pretty much from there it goes into some of the online comics that they were doing, like the Leech one, which, to be completely honest, I never even got to read those. So that's but like the Leech issue and stuff, and then it goes into the ongoing book after that point, which is the Dispara storyline,
which led
that started up. And that the Keith Geffen was working on it, but then you'll get to that issue, the issue number 1, You'll go on from there. And it has the Eternity War.
Yep.
It has the let me see back through here really quick.
Right, the Thundercats next, I would assume.
Yeah, I'm getting through the Eternity War stuff. And then you do get into the Thundercats crossover, which I still love the artwork in that one, just it being something so drastically different. But like I got to meet the artist, Freddie Williams, and it's like I feel like he bought every Classics figure before he did this arc because they all look like the Classics versions of all the figures. I mean, the King Randor is a legit. This is the Classics Randor and all that. So yeah, I mean, honestly, there are people that are out there probably, like, should I get it? Should I not get it? I'm gonna say get it because, I'll admit it. Like I haven't read every single thing that Masters has ever done, but to have it all in one place, at least the DC stuff, is cool. You got those online editions that now here they are in print, and also you get the old school flavor, like to Tempt the Gods, like we're going to talk about.
I just find it interesting. For me, I don't know, my mind, like if I'm arranging a shelf, I'd put it like the 80s stuff and then the modern stuff, but I guess I get why DC wanted to pull out their modern stuff first.
Hey, here's what we're doing, and and the cover is even the first issue cover, so it's like they're starting it right off there. But another really cool thing before we get into it that I'm a fan of is you get to see the concept artwork in the back.
Yeah, I remember
so like
that.
Philip Tan art,
which I think a lot of that concept art, I wish they'd use some of those designs in the actual. I think they deviated once it made it to print a little bit, but we'll talk more about that once we get to.
So yeah, I mean, I'll show off more here and there, but this thing is ridiculous to try to lug around. So we'll just get into what. But it sounds like
it's got a lot of extra content in it, which.
It does. I know Freddie Williams is concept art for all the individual characters for the Thundercats crossover is in the back. It's got like single character shots. It's got there's a few where they're group shots of individual, like the Eternian warriors, and then you have like the main characters. You have the evil warriors and stuff. And that's pretty cool. So. But to Tempt the Gods, we're going to start here.
Tempt the Gods. So when you got the omnibus is the first time you read this?
Yes. And that's the thing. Like, we've talked about it privately. Like there's people out there that the minute they get on the internet, the first thing they looked up was He-Man.
Right.
When I got on the internet, the first thing I looked up was not He-Man because I was at the age where I was 16, 17 and stuff like that. So like, the He-Man stuff for me, I'm getting back into it now in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. And, for me at this point, some of this stuff that I thought was lost to time for me, it's like, here I am coming back to exactly. Yeah. Issue 3 and issue 2 and everything. I mean, it's like, this is all the stuff. I had both of those as a kid, but I always had this like, but I don't have issue 1.
Right.
So,
but here, not to take it too far, these stories were written in a way. While it is a 3-issue arc, there is a beginning, middle, and end to this. There is a beginning, middle, and end to issue 2. There is a beginning, middle, and end to issue 3, and they all flow together, which I think is something that is lost in comics nowadays. And I wish, especially for a series like Masters, that they would get back to. I miss the self-contained stories where you can read an issue and feel like that was a nice adventure.
Yeah.
Whereas these miniseries they keep doing, I feel like, well, I've got to wait till the end of the 6-issue or 12-issue run before I can really go, that was a good story, because it's an act of a story rather than 3 stories that go together.
And we were just talking about the Filmation stuff. It's a symptom of the difference between episodicness versus binging nowadays. Right. And, like that's kind of why reading this, it had this charm that I feel is completely lacking in today's comics. Like you said, beginning, middle, and end. And on top of that, it feels like a robust enough story in one issue that by the time you get to the second issue, you got a lot of stuff thrown at you, and it didn't feel like they wasted your time in any part. And even there's one page in this where Zodak shows up, and even that page has little tiny bits that make you appreciate the characters a little more based on how he views them.
Right.
So, it's like every bit of this comic adds up to the sum of its parts and makes it a really fulfilling book to check out. So,
absolutely. So let's dive right in. We open up here.
Let's do it. And we get this amazing splash page of the heroic warriors all basically leaping into battle. And we get our Battleground Tila for the Classics fans.
Yeah, well, this is where it came from.
Yes, yeah. And I'll be honest, I thought that the Horsemen did a great job on the figure itself, and I love that they referenced this because that's one of those blink and you miss it moments in Tila's history. But there is still something about the look of her in here from her face that I feel the Classics figure still can't quite get to, because looking at her in here, it's just I'm just sitting there going oh, Tila. The barbarian look, for me, it works quite well in making her look like a, you have your He-Man and then you have her, and the way that they present her in here, she more than holds her own fighting alongside He-Man and also being the voice of reason in battle. Yep. I really like that quite a lot.
No, it's a good personality. It's good, different personality. I do wish that for the figure, when they released it, either they had just said, we talked about before, I wish they would have just said, this is the early DC Comics Tila, rather than having, or even just making her a new character, using the design, making it a new character if you want to weave her in. But that's just personal preference. I prefer the red-headed Tila, the more traditional outfit, but it is a neat design. And the funny thing is, just side tangent, we won't get into it because we'll cover someday, but by issue 2, she did manage to change clothes, and she was back to her regular outfit in the rest of the series. So,
interesting.
I'm assuming this went off to print, and then Mattel was like, because there was that whole confusion. We got to address that real quick about Tila and the Goddess and who that figure actually was. Because they're, the early imaginings of the line, that snake armor figure, which you will see in here, is the Goddess, and that's how she was conceptualized. And then they came up with Tila, who was supposed, in the first concept drawings, she was similar because they were going to use that same body type, just like they used the He-Man body type for all the male characters, basically. Couple, different arms and everything. And so there was confusion early on about who's Tila, who's the Goddess. Tila was, once the Sorceress was introduced, all that pretty much cleared up, and it became Tila, whether it was snake armor or not.
Yeah.
But basically, in the early line, Tila was the figure without the snake armor, and probably originally intentionally going to be blonde, because almost all these early comics picture her as a blonde. And then the Goddess was with the snake armor, so.
Yeah, my guess is they probably, me not knowing completely, but they probably just went based on the original 4 mini comics, because in there she has the blonde hair, and I think that's their way of differentiating her from the Sorceress, even though we didn't get the Goddess, I should say, sorry. We didn't get 2 figures to represent that, so I think that was their shorthand visually to represent them.
And I think probably for this first issue, they probably just didn't. DC wasn't sure who Tila was. Didn't realize that it was basically the same figure, and so they probably came up with their own design. And then Mattel probably stepped in for 2 and 3 and said, "Hey, get her back on model, will you? Because we need to sell some toys."
But for me, as a 30 and 40-year-old man looking back at this, it's like, I would have been okay with that. It's like, but back in the old days, Julie Newmar as Catwoman did not disappoint me. Even when I was a kid watching the old Batman show, I'd be like, I don't know why I like this, but I just do. And this is kind of the Tila in here for me. Looking at her at that age, I'm sure my mom would have been like, oh, why did they have to dress her like that? And I'd be like, because it's awesome.
Yep.
So, but yeah, we open up and we get a very Prince Valiant-esque version of Eternia. It kind of like Gone is the palace is much more of a typical palace. Like if you said to somebody, think of a castle, this is the default castle you'd expect.
Typical
You
medieval.
have it's way more medieval Renaissance fair looking than it is like the Eternos Palace, and more fantastical like filmation and everything. And even I think the hardest thing to swallow for anybody who might not have been reading this is you have a lot of the typical King's English, and I'm doing that in quotes because I wouldn't say it's identical, but the typical sire and this and that, and heir instead of ever and stuff. There's that sort of a vibe going on here where there's still, even in the mini comics, they were figuring out, what do these guys sound like? Are they going to be the old English sounding kind of characters that most people were used to hearing in movies and in comics? Or were they just going to talk like us?
Right.
And here they just went full out. No, it's going to be old English kind of sounding. And we get a lot of Man-at-Arms and King Randor. The scene starts out at the castle, and they're celebrating the Queen's 25th anniversary of being in Eternia.
Right.
So, but then we also have off to the side, we have tons of King Randor and Man-at-Arms complaining about Prince Adam.
Right.
And that amuses the heck out of me because they keep on saying rabble-rouser and things like that about him through many, many, many word balloons in this.
And I do like it. They set up the character of Prince Adam. It's the much more womanizer, playboy, ladies' man, Adam. Couple interesting things to me. I mean, it's beautiful artwork through all. Once again, the people who worked on this, you named them earlier, they didn't phone it in. They gave it their all. They treated everything seriously, and it shows. There's some nice looking women there.
Yes.
The thing that I find interesting, real quick, again, I feel like I keep tangenting off, but you got to look at the time frame. This was December of '82. This comic was. So you're after the Alcala mini comics. I believe the Texeras were probably in production at this time too, which is what this reminds me of the most. It's not those first 4 mini comics. It feels much more the Texera mini comics, the Mystery Man Faces. The Magic Stealer.
There is a bit to that. Yeah,
it's definitely still an origin story, so we're setting up all the characters. Filmation is working on their series now. Check out episode 2 for our review of Curse of the Spellstone. And I got the book right here again. So like for this is the time corridor I'm flipped to now, but the first the script was approved for Time Corridor in January of '83. I wanted to say Curse of the Spellstone was like December of '82. So Filmation's already got their Bible at this point. They're working on their stuff. They're crafting their world. DC's doing their stuff. And there's a lot of overlap. You see a lot of stuff introduced here that would then show up in the Filmation show. So I have to assume that they probably weren't working directly together. But between the 3 of them, with Mattel being the center point, a lot of the concepts were being bounced back and forth. So you've got the secret identity, you've got a transformation, and all that. Why I bring this up is I find it interesting here because with Man-at-Arms and King Randor's dialogue, while I like it, one of the key differences you can obviously tell, Man-at-Arms has no idea that Prince Adam is He-Man. He is ragging on him just as much as King Randor is. There is none of that. Well, sire, give him a chance. Don't judge him. Don't be too harsh on him. No, Man-at-Arms is like, I've trained this kid my whole life, and he's a loser.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting dynamic. I don't mind it, even if I do prefer Man-at-Arms knowing the secret. I like this. It's some nice dialogue between all of them.
Well, it sets the stage nicely, like you were saying, especially with the thing that I actually like a lot about this story is when we get to what the plot of the villain is, because they're setting up Adam to be this selfish, like lazy person. And then when you find out what He-Man's up against in this, it really does turn that completely on its head. And I like that there is even a moment where Adam's like, yeah, this is all a play. That's all there is to it. Like, he admits it even in here. This is all a play. It's it is what it is, basically. And he's not thrilled that he has to be this guy, but he's being it at this point. But yeah, I do like they're having the big talk about, Adam being this and Adam being that. And then there's this woman that shows up. Oh, hello. He actually says, not now, woman, which is great. So, but yeah, I like
Hang on 1 minute, Shawn.
that element of it. And I don't know. Like, sure. Yeah, basically Prince Adam, he's here, he's the womanizer version of him, and not now, woman, and this girl's there trying to get his attention, and I don't know. When I was a kid, even though it was probably more adult than I needed to read, my mom would let me get Conan comics from Marvel and stuff like that. So this kind of stuff was second nature to me. Even at a young age, it's just like, all right, the guy is going to be cavorting or whatever, and so them having this as part of Adam, it didn't bother me. And that's actually why when I first saw the Filmation stuff, seeing this and then seeing Filmation, it is kind of like, what the hell? Like, there is a certain amount of like, well, I liked Adam as kind of being irresponsible by doing more this than, he's fishing or he's this or that. But like, I started with this. Right. That's the difference. Whereas other people that had Filmation, it's like, oh, well, Adam would just be out there fishing with Cringer or whatever. It's like, all right,
Yeah, and as a kid, I mean, I didn't read this as a kid. I was older. But yeah, as a kid, I probably wouldn't have thought anything really of it. I mean, you can read as much or as little into it as you want.
Yeah, that's true.
It's done nicely in a way where if you want to read in that they were back there having adult activities, it works. If you want to say like he was just out, drinking with her, it works. I mean, it's done in a way where anyone can read it and whatever. I do like this. I mean, and here we have Marlena coming from Earth. I love this shot here. Randor, very medieval, and her ship actually blowing up in the atmosphere like she literally crash landed like that. She probably jettisoned out at the last minute, and he found her, and so you see the beginnings of the Earth. They always, I don't know, I guess it just makes it accessible for kids on an alien world to have some tie into Earth,
And that was one of those things I always thought was a pure Filmation part of the mythology. So to look at that and just be like, oh, okay, so that started way before Filmation got their hands on it. There's an element of like, okay, I can't really fight that idea because this is earlier than that. So to me, it's like even further into the mythology than just Filmation even. So it's like, all right, I can't really fight the idea of her being from Earth now.
Right.
But well, hey, like I said, I didn't get to read these until now. So I'm like, I always went under the assumption that was just the Filmation part of the story. So yeah, but that image of the ship and her and Randor there, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's actually one of my favorite panels in the whole first issue.
Right.
But then we have Adam bemoaning, he has to do this as an act, and my book is falling apart because of cover.
Yeah.
And
it's nice. Right off the bat here, they treat it. I know I brought it up in private before. I think I brought it up on one of our previous episodes. Right here, they say right off the bat, it started off as adolescent rebellion. Now I must remain this personality. Like, yeah, he really was. And we talked about it when we did the beginning from Mike Young Productions. It's like, yes, that's how he was at one point because he is a spoiled prince at one point, but he assumes the power and he grows. But he has to keep this to protect everybody. And here we introduce Cringer for the first time,
Yeah.
And he's just like Filmation, honestly. He's a coward, he's hiding, he's lazy, he was napping, and Adam gets into his room and there's all these cool monstrosities from hell. I mean, I love these guys. These are awesome.
By the dark gods, what manner of sorcery is this?
Mm-hmm.
And then him hiding under the bed
With Cringer
being under there, and like Cringer speaking better English than half the people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There it is. Sorry, all you Filmation ruined Battlecat. DC did it first. Haha.
Yeah, it's.
I kid.
No. That the thing is, for somebody like me who I think, I'd be okay with Cringer not talking. I'd be okay with Battlecat not talking, and it being more either like a Han and Chewie relationship where he can kind of distinguish what he means or whatever, or I've said it before, deeds not words with how Battlecat is. Right. It's like, I don't have a leg to stand on in here. I'm diffusing my own arguments, and I don't like this, but I still like it because Alcala, and also, like I said, it's the beginnings of the way that I view it. This is the bare bones here of this is how I played when I was a kid, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's like you can see the process of how Mattel. I mean, they were very much fluid with the story since they went, and you can see where they're moving with this. But yeah, you get the, and I was honestly kind of confused about this as to why, and I don't really say it, so a little sloppy writing here, but why these monsters are attacking Prince Adam. Between this and the next scene where they run into Cavern of Power, I'm almost assuming that Skeletor knows He-Man is Adam in this. Because why else would he send them to attack him?
Yeah, I'm up in the air about that. The only other thing I could think of is there is a character later on who is at the palace. The wizard, it's a Tarek, I want to say, that maybe has something to do with what he's doing because he's in the middle of fighting stuff that's similar to that. But there are things in this that I'm still lost on.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to have moments where I just look at you and go, I don't know, or okay, like if you can decipher it better. I took it that it was something along those lines with the sorcerer and not Skeletor, but it makes more sense it would be Skeletor because then how would he know everything that happens? Like he needs to know what Skeletor is going to tell him in order for anything else to happen.
Right.
So maybe it is Skeletor, and so that's like a whole okay. If Skeletor knows. Okay, the other way you could look at it is Skeletor just found out because of what he just did.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll just say the way I took it when reading it as like those were Skeletors to alert Adam that like he needs to go to the Cavern of Power because it is and it is we'll just get into that right now. They do say. And I looked it up in the character guide and World Compendium for Dark Horse Comics. That's another great book. A lot of great people did this. Danielle Galerta, Val Staples, James Etok had something to do with it. So many more. I don't have time to list them all. But I did look up the entry for Cavern of Power, and it does confirm in there that Skeletor does know the location of it. And in this continuity, that is how Adam and Cringer transform. They enter the cave, and they are transformed into He-Man and Battlecat. So I took it as Skeletor sent these monsters to attack him so that he would go, I've got to change into He-Man, head to the cavern where Skeletor is waiting for him. And since Skeletor is waiting for him there, I don't know. To me, it just reads that he knows the identity, which I don't like. And honestly, I don't like the Cavern of Power. We'll just get into that real quick here. I don't want to tangent too long, but having that be the way they transform, I feel limits your story too much.
Oh, I agree completely.
Because then all you have to do to beat Adam, especially if Skeletor knows Adam is He-Man, all I've got to do is stop him from getting to the Cavern of Power. Done. It takes all the. I mean, you get into some of the stories. Courage of Adam and the Mike Young. I'm trying to think. Oh, the episode just escaped me, but the one Disappearing Act. In Filmation, pretty much any episode or story where Adam gets captured, that's it. We win.
Yeah.
So I don't like it as a plot device. It's too limited that every time there's danger, I've got to run to this cavern and then I've got to
Yeah.
get back to the action.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree completely.
and
It's
it was in the earliest Filmation, or one of the early Filmation Bibles. So once again, this is a concept that was at one point shared, and then um, they abandoned it. And I'm pretty sure I've read in interviews that that's why Filmation abandoned it, because they felt it was too hard of a plot device to work with.
the way, like, the only way I could accept this is saying the sorceress lives at, or the goddess.
The
Sorry,
goddess.
because we're still dealing with the goddess. I keep defaulting to sorceress. The goddess lives in the cavern of power, and that's her headquarters, so that Grayskull can just be its own thing.
Right.
That's the only way I can accept it. But like, we're talking. This is axe and shield He-Man.
Right.
This is not like power sword wielding He-Man. So there is, like, I like that look of him.
Sure.
But when I think about it, there is a logistical of then he can't be Adam, because if he
Right.
doesn't have the sword. So it's like Filmation, that is Filmation pure and simple to me, but it works because it's something he has with him all the time. It's something that basically is a lightning rod to conduct the energy he needs to become He-Man, and he just has it with him all the time. It makes so much more sense to have that just be the means of transformation. This Cavern of Power thing, that's the only way I'm going to accept it. That is the place where the sorceress took He-Man after he left the jungle and said, "Here's your harness, here's your weaponry," and that could be the Cavern of Power in that way.
It works for that
But
continuity, absolutely.
But having that always be his telephone booth for Superman, no.
And the sword works in that it's still not. You can still take it away. You can still have those circumstances where he can't transform, and you can still have that tension there because he can lose it or it can get captured or whatever. But yeah, and that's exactly what they're doing here. As you see in the next page, he talks about Grayskull, and it's still very much that Alcala Grayskull. It's the fortress of mystery and power. He says whoever can breach the walls of the great castle will hold sway over all of eternity as its king. It's very much that first concept Grayskull. It's not the fortress of good or evil, but they're taking it and making it work with the Adam He-Man, with the world that they're transitioning to. So it works here, but I prefer a simple sword.
Well, and the thing is, like, I'm thinking of it just from, okay, once you change one thing, the whole domino thing has to fall, or else nothing is going to work, and it makes sense. And it's like, for me to like this version of He-Man, but then, and I still like the idea that Grayskull could be its own entity in some ways. I like that Grayskull can be controlled by whoever wins Grayskull, whoever gets inside of it. But then you're throwing the sword into the mix, and he's calling upon the power of Grayskull.
Right.
You got to have it where it's more good than evil, no matter what, in that basis. Then, so it's like, it's the craziest thing. It's like everything I love is now getting turned on its head for the logistical reasons of why it got changed. And there's that part of me that I'm fighting it, and the other part of me is like, but now you know why this hasn't been the mythology ever since 1983.
Right.
Yeah. So, basically, we have Skeletor is waiting for him in the Cave of Power, or the Cavern of Power, Cave of Power, and he, as you said, he's discussing about Grayskull being, whoever controls it is the king and everything. And he basically taunts He-Man with the fact that he has the goddess.
Yep.
The goddess is his captive now.
Yep. And there is, and then they flash back, and he shows when he entered the cave and the battle they had, which is really neat. And I find it, I guess it's more my looking at it from the modern way, but in modern comics, there would not be this much dialogue and this much writing, especially for this. But I do like it, the way they did it. And actually, probably more modern comics need to do this sort of thing. Because here they have this awesome battle, like a three-page battle, 4-page, 3-ish. No, maybe just 2. There's an advertisement in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's pretty much like 2.
Yeah, I got a Lifesavers circle of flavors
Oh,
in
well,
between there.
You go.
So, but it's this nice little battle, and at the same time, they're still giving the history and everything. And it's funny because even Skeletor talks about Grayskull, and He-Man replies, "I'm no schoolboy who needs to be told of my planet's ancient legends." It's just neat because he's doing that monologue for the readers, and He-Man just like, dude, shut up. So that's
I
fun.
like that though. That's a great way to do the exposition, but also have He-Man like ready to burst into battle because where's the source? Where's the goddess?
Right.
What have you done with her?
And he said he's doing the Incredibles thing. He's like, "Why are you monologuing? Why are you? Who are you talking to?
And it's like Skeletor's like, no one.
Right.
Wink.
But it works. And the same thing with all the dialogue, because it's not word bubbles. I guess it is Skeletor talking about his battle with the goddess, but it's giving you the essence of the world. It's filling you on the backstory. So we still have the 2 halves of the power sword. We have the goddess. Skeletor is from another dimension. He says that there since your arrival on your planet. So yeah, it's a very nice blend, and it helps if you read this series. You help see the bridge, how they got from Alcala to Filmation with Texera comics, mini comics along the way. I do. Okay, I'm gonna be the nitpicky one here, Shawn.
Okay.
So the whole battle with the goddess is they're battling, and he's got the power of the energy blade, and the goddess banishes his half of the power sword to another dimension. Now flip back to when He-Man and Battlecat confront Skeletor when they first burst into the Cavern of Power.
Yeah, he's got it.
He's holding his Havoc staff and the power sword. So there's my nitpick. Ha!
I'll bet you any money. Well, no, I bet you any money, and I'm not trying to make any kind of like, but I'll bet you any money they just said Skeletor's standing there triumphantly.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, well, he comes with a sword, he comes with the Havoc staff. I'll draw it. And then when he gets to the pages later, he's like, I hope they don't notice this.
Or even, you could say, without the word bubbles, you really don't know that this fight takes place previous. So maybe even the artist, when he was doing it, he's looking at, and I'm not the biggest comic guy, so I don't know the process. But maybe he's just looking at whatever I assume they still kind of storyboard things out, or maybe he's just going from the script and he didn't realize that the battle with the goddess came before, even though it's after.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm not excusing it because now that you brought that up, it's like, yeah, that's a very, very valid point. So I'm not going to argue.
But it looks cool. It's a minor nitpick.
I'll tell you one thing I liked a lot though is they have the 2 panels like Skeletor's waving the sword around and trying to threaten the goddess, and then the goddess the next panel just throws the staff at him, her snake staff, and it turns into a snake to attack him. I've always thought that should happen, and it's so cool that it happens in this story. And it's just one of those simple things. Like it reminds me of Conan the Barbarian, where Thulsa Doom pulls the snake and makes it into an arrow so he could shoot people, and it's got that kind of vibe that I like about it.
You know what's funny, Shawn? You're gonna laugh at me, but I was this year's old when I realized that she changed her staff into the snake. I just looked at it as she conjured a set, because we've seen them do that before. Skeletor will summon snakes or whatever. But yeah, no, I like that. So she changed her staff into there, and then she ends up, because then in the next panel she doesn't have anything, and then you can see that
it's
one
bad.
after
Like
that
she picks it up. Yeah. Yeah. I dig that a lot, and
that's pretty neat. Thanks for pointing that out.
It's the simple little detail, because the only reason I think it is the staff is in the panel before that she has it in her right hand, and then when you look at the panel with Skeletor, she's throwing it with her right hand still. So I'm like, makes sense.
Yeah,
it's probably
nothing in the next. No, it completely tracks. I'm sure you're right there. That's really neat.
And then Yeah, I actually like this part here where he says, "I know I held but half in my grasp,
Yeah.
but am I not Skeletor?"
Right.
It's just the whole idea that he didn't have the full power of the Power Sword, but that half was more than enough for him to be like, "Well, I still can do this,"
Right.
and he's still gunning for her.
Oh, absolutely.
And
And you can it shows how powerful he is even now that He-Man's there and he doesn't have that power
Mhm.
sword because he's still got enough to take him on.
yeah,
And this is definitely not the super powered. I'm going to keep saying it. It's not the Superman He-Man even close to any means.
nope.
This is very much a barbarian, axe and shield, strong, but not superhero strong.
Yeah, exactly. So
Um,
Skeletor basically waves the idea, I have the sorceress, but to get in order to save her, you're going to get the power swords for me.
right.
So he's throwing out the, like the hero has to do his work, as in the evil work he wants to do in order to win.
Right.
And he's giving him a no-win situation here, which that's what I was saying earlier. The whole way that they show Adam as being selfish, and he doesn't have responsibilities, and he's chasing women or whatever it is, rabble rousing. They
Yep.
keep saying. I like the idea that now you're throwing the hero into a situation where he's like, I guess I have to, or else someone will die.
Right.
And I really dig that part of this story quite a lot.
Yep. He knows he needs the goddess, and he's got no choice. He's up against the wall. And that pretty much leads us into the quest of the miniseries. Is that there's these three talismans that he's got to find, and that will lead the way to both halves of the power sword.
Yeah, the talismans represent the sea, the sky, and the cosmos. And when you get all three of those, they'll lead you. And then we get into our little Zodak page. And the Zodak page, basically, it's the typical, if you know Zodak, he's looking at the balance. He's worrying about, does Skeletor go too far this time? Does he have to interfere? And so far, he's like, no, I don't have to interfere. But something he says here,
Right.
I actually like. Let me get the light on here better.
Yeah, and I'll say real quick, on the cover there, we still had the evil bounty hunter Zodak, because he is clearly aligned with Skeletor's forces on the cover. But inside, he
still
is
that mystery
he
guy.
is that cosmic enforcer that it's always been a little blurry. And I know he showed up in Fate is the Killer 2, which was that one shot that appeared in the other comics. And there he was also very much this neutral cosmic enforcer. So pretty much they decided on Zodak's character at this time. But the looks like whoever did, and I think the front page was that a different artist?
I think in the other one it was a different artist.
I don't know. It says
I'd have to
it's
double
still
check.
Tusca as the
Tusca.
pencil. His name, but Giordano colored it, unlike
Okay.
Alcala in the inside. So it was the same artist, but yeah, just that little flub there. But it looks like by this point he had been decided to be the neutral cosmic enforcer.
I like this line Zodak says here. To lead up to, once more has Skeletor sought to tamper with the forces that rule in the universe, tipping the scales in his favor through the abduction of the Eternian goddess, risking the wrath of forces even he does not quite comprehend, in the name of the conquest of yet another world. So he is a conqueror in that way. And then, yet, how might he know the goddess's role in the Eternian plane as pivotal or as pivotal and oh so vital to the continued flow of time and space? This part is the part I like a lot. Skeletor is but the most primal of beings, born of lust and hate, fueled by greed and motivated by desires he has never sought to question nor made attempt to conquer. I mean, if you're looking at the before filmation version of, and even before the Keldor version, MYP, that is such an awesome way to sum him up in these original versions so well that, I mean, just the whole born of lust and hate, that makes me want to know what that origin was like for him compared to the one that we've adopted of the Keldor version now. So
Oh, absolutely.
it puts some mystery there, I guess.
Yeah, it's very much the it's very much the other world, the Conqueror Skeletor, the one we saw in those first 4 mini comics. Um, it's a good origin for a Skeletor. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really thought about my preferred version because I think the different versions fit in different storylines, and depending on what
Yeah.
storyline you're doing, that's the one you should go with. Um, but for this one, it's good, and you feel like not only has He-Man and Skeletor fought for a while, but you feel like Zodak here, like he's watched Skeletor for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and he's seen him do different things, conquer different worlds,
Yeah.
and he says he has to wait. The cosmos will show him his path, so he's not sure what he needs to do. He knows he needs to do something, and he's just waiting to see that purpose that he'll serve. So you can only imagine. And you really start thinking about the backstory of this Zodak. Like he could have sat here and watched Skeletor conquer 100 worlds
Yeah.
over thousands of years, whatever. This Skeletor has always struck me as kind of like a eternal demon. Like he doesn't have definitely like an average lifespan. Like basically he'll survive until he's defeated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, could you imagine that? Like having to be tasked with that to like just sit and watch this evil being just destroy things and just not be able to do anything.
Yeah, the thing is when I flipped to that page, I automatically went, it's a Zodak page, and my interest in Zodak is not what people that like Zodaks would be. So when I saw that page, I'm like, oh, here we go. But then reading that, it's like, man, do they do a great job of giving you some meat to the bones of the story, and just those word balloons, and it paints more to the picture of what Skeletor is for me, and that's what, like, when I finished that page, I'm like, that was great. Like,
Right.
that was great writing to make you just go, like, this is what he is. This is what we're going up against. So
No, for sure. And then you get to you get back to the palace.
yeah,
And I like that He-Man's not like. Sorry, I'm leaning over to read my comic. I'm over back in front of me. I like that He-Man's not just like the like just instant access. He can't just roll in. There's very much.
Yeah.
It's very medieval setup. There's guards and everything, and even He-Man, which. Oh no, they do say he's never been to the palace before because he says he's never been in the presence of the king and queen as He-Man in this story.
Mm-hmm.
So the guards aren't like, "Hey, come on in, buddy." They give him a little. Even though I'm sure they obviously know about He-Man, the king and queen know of He-Man.
Yeah.
He's not just the superhero that just can stroll on in, and everyone's like,
He's not just in the other room and walks on by,
right?
in this version.
So,
and then we get introduced to Tila for that reason, which is great. Mm-hmm. The captain of the guard. She's still the captain of the guard in this version.
Yep, and you can tell that she and He-Man have battled before. Like they probably met up out,
Mm-hmm.
There was a Skeletor on the plains of Perpetua or something. They obviously know each
other.
And then
the thing I like about her characterization in this is, number one, there's never a moment where she doesn't look like she could be an equal to him. And that's the whole thing. Like, in this day and age, there's all these people who are raging about, all the women characters have to be more powerful or better than the boys and all that stuff. And it's like, for me, Masters set the stage for that. Because Tila and She-Ra were always like these characters that they were always on a level playing ground for the most part with the guys. And I never once ever looked at Tila and go, no, like she should be the damsel in distress. It's like, Tila's going to punch you in the face if you capture her, So I like that they, like you said, there's a history between the two of them when they meet here. And I like that she's just like, no, let him in. I got this, and she's confident with herself. She's not starstruck seeing He-Man,
No, exactly, and that's exactly how it shows up. And she gets him in. I love here again. We're building the character of Randor. Even here, he's very disappointed in his son, and he even says, and this is what I like about the comics is the thought balloons. I love
Yeah.
thought balloons. It gives you a little more insight into their character. They can come out and just basically spell some stuff out that they normally you just kind of have to insinuate. And He-Man addresses that he's basically Adam in different clothing. He's thinking about it. He's like, oh, they're gonna recognize me. This is why I've never been here before. But he had to come here for the quest,
Mm-hmm.
which they don't because and we go into basically the Superman Clark Kent, which again this is DC Comics writing this. He acts so different and he's so imposing and so confident and his personality is so different that they don't recognize him. And Randor even thinks, to have one such as He-Man as my heir rather than Adam.
Yeah, and the king can only sigh his silent disappointment.
And that
Oh
sums it up
man.
perfectly for me. It's Filmation didn't say that so much, but it reminds me of in Filmation in dang, these episode titles are escaping me today. Pawns of the Game Master, when Adam and Tila are sparring, and Tila says, "Oh, I wish I knew someone with the courage of He-Man, but the personality of Adam." And of course, we just get to sit here and go, "Oh, if you only knew."
Yep.
But I like those moments. It shows what he's giving up, really, to be this hero that Eternia needs. He's giving up the chance to make his father proud. And
Yeah.
eventually one day he will reveal his identity. They'll
Mm-hmm.
see that they were wrong about him, but he's willing to delay that satisfaction for the greater good. And that's
Yeah.
that's a key quality of He-Man. And that's kind of what's missing for me personality wise from the Alcala mini comics. I think the dual identity adds a lot to his character for me personally.
I can't disagree with you there. For me, the Filmation transformation was what tipped it over the edge for why it works. I mean, that's such a magnificent moment every episode that you're treated to that for me, I'm like, I can't divorce myself of that at this point because it's so essential. But it's like, I agree. There is a flatness to the barbarian character they had in the mini comics. There is a richness to having the humanity of Adam inside of this hulking warrior who can take care of business, and because otherwise you're hearing them talking about boasting and making fun of each other, and he's a lot different as a personality type. So, and then we get to meet Tarek, the sorcerer of Eternia, or at least the palace, and
Yeah, I like
he
that how they just like, oh yeah, we got a couple wizards downstairs.
yeah.
Go ahead down there and
It's like they don't have
check
Orcos,
them
so they got to
out.
have somebody to do something around here with magic. And he did something completely crazy because he's fighting all these demons in his I guess his laboratory. And He-Man and Tila just come in with Battle Cat, and they just start taking care of business, which is fun because you're seeing He-Man wielding an axe to go into battle, which doesn't happen very often these days. So,
Yeah,
and Tila's got her gun or her laser and her sword. So,
I see now what you're saying about like those demons were probably sent to to find the wizard.
I saw that coming from a mile away.
Is that
A box
Duchess?
fell. No, a box fell, and it was because I put my foot up again on
No.
the chair. Most powerful man of the universe, indeed.
There
So
you
yeah,
go.
um,
But yeah, it's. I see what you mean now about the. I didn't think about it when I was reading through this earlier, but yeah, I can see the demons were probably summoned to find Tarek. But then you also got to think like those demons have been here the whole time and he's been fighting them off, which I mean that's cool in and of itself too. But
that's the only thing that made sense to me after reading it the whole way through. But again, either way, the Skeletor one makes it creepier because he knows what the deal is, and it's like I can find you now. And this way, it makes sense too because somebody needed help. One way or the other, it doesn't matter at this point to me. It's let's get the story rolling. But yeah, you see them they're talking about body counts here,
yeah,
and
there's
that's
great
something you don't hear
dialogue.
in Filmation. and then you even get Man-at-Arms joining in, and I think it's kind of cool. They did Filmation with him where he joins in, and he doesn't have his mace, but he's using his wrist lasers to go to town on some of these demons and creatures.
Yeah, they make sure to have Tila with her ray gun and a sword, so that
Yep.
they definitely pushed, and they said it earlier, like, this isn't just a medieval world, it's very much a world of technology, too. So they did a good job of setting the basics. I love this little red demon that's, like, gnawing on He-Man's rib cage.
Yeah, that's creepy. That's like really, like, ugh. There's something about that I'm not good with blood to begin with. There's no blood, but the insinuation that he's probably digging into the flesh is like, ugh. So,
No,
but yeah,
absolutely.
I like that they take care of the business. Like I said, Man-at-Arms shows up, and he definitely makes his presence known to the battle. And then we finally get to meet this Tarek guy who has never been in anything other than this, as far as I know, unless I'm
No,
wrong.
you are correct. That's what I was doing
Okay.
a second ago. I looked him up in the Character Guide and World Compendium, available now from Dark Horse Comics. We'll get some sponsors of this show somehow, Shawn.
I was just gonna say one way or the other, but Tarek basically he's there to kind of help them on their quest, and he says these demons were after the very same pendant that He-Man's after, which is the cosmic pendant that Skeletor needs to out of the three to get the power sword. So then that leads He-Man to now say, so now there's someone else looking for this. It's not just me. And, that's getting him more angry for the fact that, now he doesn't know what else he's up against, but he has to complete his quest.
And it is, we got He-Man very smart. He's going, I know it's not Skeletor, because Skeletor would not, well, he knows Skeletor is going to double cross him at some point. He knows he's also not stupid enough to send him on a quest and then try and kill him before he's
exactly.
accomplished it for him. Which I did find that interesting here, that DC felt the need to bring in a second villain, a third party, in basically their first story arc. That's interesting. So basically, from the beginning here, I mean, there's always been that thought of third party villains, which some of them are pretty cool. Filmation did a lot of them. But it really gives you the feeling of Eternia being a place. It's not just He-Man, Skeletor. There's a lot of other forces, both good and evil here.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that quite a lot, and I like how once he tells Tila and Man-at-Arms what is really happening here, I love that, Tila's like, well, screw that, like she's basically, Diora's chain, which I don't know what that is, and I don't know if it's ever been referenced anywhere else, but then you're bound by an oath to aid that fiend. And then I like the Man-at-Arms like, what are you going to do now, He-Man? Like, everybody here has that highfalutin old English thing, but I could hear Man-at-Arms, what are you going to do now? What's next? I don't know.
Yeah, they definitely look at him to be the leader and to tell him what to do here. Yeah, there's not even a... No, but it looks like it was probably just this and just a throwaway line, because there's nothing in the artifacts section about Deidre's chain. Yeah, just like later, Beastman has a line about somebody's beard. I forget now, we'll get to it, but they definitely tried to try and make it feel like its own world, its own expressions, rather than using earthly expressions, And there is
which works.
It does. They say stuff about by the gods or by the goddess and stuff like that. So here again, while this looks much more earthly than Filmation in its medieval presentation, they still try and make you feel like you're on another planet.
Yeah.
And so then they send it on their way. He-Man knows he still has to go through, and helping Skeletor. And then sorry, I read this earlier, but I don't remember. Did the demons get the talisman, or I'm trying to read right quick.
I know the demons attacked Tarek for the talisman. I think they did get the talisman, actually, because otherwise I figured Tarek probably would have. It
That's
says,
what I thought. I was just reading back through the pages to make sure I didn't miss them saying that he gave it to them. So yeah,
yeah, they said all they seemed interested in was the trinket.
yeah. And so here again,
Yeah.
the villain, um, who we'll come to find out later, is another evil wizard named Damon. He actually succeeded. He's got one talisman. So now all they can do is just try and move on to the next one. So
Yeah.
and it's nice not having the heroes automatically win. I like that. Give them something to
Yeah.
work for.
Definitely. So Tarek basically says, I'll help you as best as I can. And then we go to Avion. And we get to see Stratos and he and his people, he and his warriors were out doing a hunting raid for a few days. So they just get back and out of nowhere, boom, they're attacked by beast men. Not man, beast men.
Yep. And real quick, I just want to talk about the home of the bird people here. It's definitely got that. It's like Filmation. Basically, birds would be on the edge of a cliff here, very high mountain peaks and homes built in, which is neat. It also has. It looks like the warriors are like the bird people. They have the wings and the power of flight, and then but there's also a lot of more traditional humanoid Eternians living there. One of which is Stratos' wife.
Yep.
Which in the mini comics as well, he had a human wife. So it's just neat seeing all that in play here. And there's a few different classes of people that live here. But yeah, it was interesting that the Beast Men, it's a whole tribe of them. Something that when they did later in like the classics line, saying that there was a whole race of Beast Men, a lot of fans spoke out against it and weren't happy with it. But you see, even back then, there was already kind of going on here. I don't mind some of the evil warriors being from a race. I don't like all of them. Like I mean, it works in certain cases, but like if everybody was from a race, then that diminishes it. I do like the idea of beastmen. It just makes sense. Some of these guys had to come from somewhere. But like Too Bad, for instance, he's not from a race of two-headed creatures.
No.
He was fused. So
yeah.
But yeah, it definitely makes sense for there to be multiple Beastmen. And here, our Beastman actually leads them, which is really cool to see. And there's a nice little fight scene here with Stratos and his people, and and it's neat. They took the little extra attention to detail and put the talisman on him right from the beginning. You get the feeling that this is something that he's worn for, probably been handed down for generations, and it's just a piece of him rather than it showing up, rather than going and grabbing it from somewhere,
Yeah, I like even just the not the dialogue, the narration here. I think is really awesome. What the attack was swift and without mercy. For these are beast men, ferocious creatures of the Eternian lowland, who are neither in truth man nor beast, rather a hellish mating of both things, beings which relish death and battle as their gods. Gods they worship with a passion. Like when I was a kid, Beastman actually was creepy looking to me, and just the idea of he looked like he'd be the most savage and ferocious. And I like that in this, they didn't pull any punches in how they wanted to describe that kind of a character. And that's my Beastman. Like that, the bumbling version never was my Beastman. It's like if you got a guy that looks like that, you play it up that he is like. Skeletor probably controls him by using sorcery more than he controls him by just talking to him. That's always been my take.
And you could also even say that he just maybe more like Evelyn is in the Filmation series, like they're working together rather than being a servant.
Yes.
He's more like, if you help me, I'll help you. I'll give you the Vine Jungle, and I'll have the throne. That sort of thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. It's always been played up a little less that way, and he's a little more of like one day Skeletor, and it's like my version of Beastman, he'd probably fight him, and Skeletor might actually be wounded by the end of that fight, like That's just me. But anyway, yeah, so Stratos is in trouble, and he's got to get out of there. He's seeking help. And the Beastmen, which it's like a little bit of a nod to me to 2000X a little bit. The Beastmen didn't just come there and fight. They came prepared and brought dragons.
Yeah.
And they're
No,
flying around
and
on
they look
dragons to
cool.
chase Stratos. And those are pretty cool looking dragons, but they reminded me of the Serpentators. But they also reminded me of just the fact he's got the Griffin as his ride all the time in 2000X too. So either way, I just love that it starts here, where he's controlling the beasts and bringing them into battle with him and chasing Stratos. And I like how they have Stratos at a disadvantage, to be honest. Like he's not, I don't look at him as like a warrior where he's going to go into the fight that way. He's more of, the air guy in that way anyway. But I like that, he just got home from a hunting trip and he's exhausted anyway. And this happens. It's like, I need help. And he's like trying to find He-Man as fast as he can then.
Yeah, and he's smart enough to realize that he's the focus, even if he doesn't know why, and so
Yeah.
he's basically preparing to sacrifice himself for his people. I'll lead them away. I may fall, but my people should be spared. I can draw them away. The weapons look great. Those dragons, that's great designs. And really a lot of action here. They're literally chucking spears at him as he's trying to. Yeah, that's the one thought on his mind. If I can find He-Man, I can get to him, and he makes it a pretty good way here because, as you see in the next panel, he actually makes it pretty close to the palace there, enough to where they can see him. As we join back up with Tarek and the heroic warriors, and he's trying to use his magic to locate the other two talismans.
Yeah, and then Tarek helps him by doing an invisibility spell, and then the Beastmen can't get a lock on him, but they basically we will get you in the end. They say it better in the book, but we will find him or perish trying. Onward, my beastly companions and stuff, and then luckily enough, Stratos makes it to the castle, and I find it to be hysterical that the very last, the second to last image of this is, oh, Stratos, you're here. And then all of a sudden, He-Man just rips the damn thing off of him. He does the whole, tis the sign of the bird, the talisman we seek. And it's like, if I was Stratos, I'd be like, dick. Like I'm literally wounded and I'm literally exhausted. But thanks, okay. There's definitely an element of like, thanks for nothing, dude. Like I needed your help. But
Yep, here we go. I bring this up every episode, but here's your fan art for this episode. It's like all you have to do is copy that pose with Stratos there and He-Man holding that, and Stratos with a thought bubble going, "That has been in my family for 7 generations."
my
How
dad gave
dare
that to
you.
me. It's like in Pulp Fiction, his father carried that in his, he went through all these wars, and it was, I could just see that being the way that, but no, like everything leading up to that point, I loved, and then that little moment, like when I saw it, I just stood there. I'm like, of course. I get it's the whole hey, I found one of them. We're great, but at the same time, it's like, but Stratos, like give the poor guy a rest. So basically, yeah, He-Man is 1 out of 3 in trying to get these talismans at the end of the issue. And you said it was Darius. What was the name again for the wizard?
Damon. Darius.
Oh, Damon.
Darius is from the New Adventures, that unused leader of the Galactic Guardians.
Okay,
Damon
yeah, so
is a wizard. But yeah, it's like it's a nice action-packed story, beginning, middle, and end. Lots of good action. And we're introduced to the world here. That's what DC was doing with this. They wanted to introduce everybody, get to know the characters. It's a great read. Everyone's well represented here.
Yeah,
and it sets you right up. So we're basically 1-to-1 at the begin or at the end of this issue. We have one, and the unnamed evil has one, and I kind of want to sit down and read the other 2 parts. I did not do that when I was done with the one because I didn't want to go too far in advance, because I know we'll do reviews of those eventually.
Yep.
But I'm kind of curious. I'm trying to remember how they carry out this story. It's been a number of years since I've read it, and you would think the normal thing would be like you got 3 issues and 3 talismans. You would think they would split it up like 1, 1, and 1, but we've already uncovered 2 in the first issue, so I can't really remember how it goes.
I know, like I said, I had issue 2 and 3 when I was a kid, but we're talking, the early 80s. I was probably all of 4 or 5 years old, so I wasn't really reading them the way I'm reading comics now. I couldn't even tell you what's in them at this point. Like I just managed to go to the page where it's the next page to open up the next issue. And I'm looking at that going, I don't remember that shot at all. Like I remember more out of that somehow than I do 2 and 3, except for the covers. Cause I remember the covers being kind of cool, but I always wanted that first issue cover with He-Man on it with the sword or the axe and the shield. And the one for issue 3, I can't not look at that and not see, let this be our final battle. It has that energy that the movie had in that moment for me. And, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
As far as I'm concerned, because that's one of the coolest moments in the movie. So
yeah.
Anyway.
So for this issue, I would probably give it, say a 7 out of 10. Mainly just because a lot of the choices they do is not my preferred continuity, even though it does work well in the story. And they're just little parts of sloppy writing. And I also got to point it out right quick, and I'll point it out again too when we do the newspaper strips, because it really bugs me there. But this front cover of He-Man, and how some artists had a tendency to draw the power harness more like a bib than a harness, bugs me. Like that cross part should not be sitting down over his abs. It should be up on his chest, and
it should be like the Superman-esque.
It always bugs me. It's really bad in those newspaper comic strips. I don't know if you check those out, but it's almost always like down on his belly, and it's like, dude, like pull it up. Like it's like seeing your kid with his shirt like
pull up those pants, or whatever.
But minor nitpicks, I'd say 7 out of 10. It's an above average story. And it holds, and it's a great one issue. I can read that issue and I can feel satisfied, even though it's part of a bigger journey. It still doesn't leave you hanging like modern comics do.
For me, I'm probably here's the thing. Like, you weren't there to have those when you were a kid. You were born after the beginning of it all started. So for me, I'm going to actually be crazy enough to say I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, because it feels like this. There's a lot of stuff in nostalgia that comes back, and it's like you don't care how it was. Like, some people are like, Filmation, that's it, boom, I love it. And I'm kind of like that about this story, because it reminds me of everything that made me want to pick up my figures before a cartoon came out and just sit there and come up with these stories when I was a kid. The art, the Alcala inking over Tuska's art is actually phenomenal. Like, that art to me holds up sometimes better than the modern stuff that's happening right now, because there is a craftsmanship that you can't bring across digitally, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And I like seeing the alternate Eternia compared to the one that we know of now. There's this like, I feel like I'm at home, but I don't know everything at this point. And I like that aspect to the beginning of any kind of story, that once I get to the end of a story, I usually am tired of whatever it is, because I feel like I know it chapter and verse. The beginning to anything always interests me more because of the potential that's out there.
Yeah.
So all of that, and then on top of that, the main cherry on the top, and I don't mean that in a bad way here, Battleground Tila.
Yeah.
I love seeing her in action. I love seeing that look of her. I'm a dude. It's as simple as that. Tila has never, ever been somebody that I get upset seeing show up. But that look in particular, for it being such a, here's the goddess, here's Tila, I love that look on her in that issue. And even though they changed it in the second and third issues, you were saying,
Yes.
it's like there's a reason I had to buy that figure when it came out. I just that works.
I get it. Like I said, well, you never really saw it either as a kid. So, but for me, it's a neat design, but it'll never be any of my preferred versions of Tila.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But solid story, good read, and it was only 60 cents. Just 60,
well, yeah,
60
back in
cents.
those days,
so
this was $70 when
Right.
I bought
Right.
the entire omnibus. I was lucky I had some credit with the comic shop for working with them and stuff. But I will say the other thing about it, which is why it's a 9 out of 10, is I'm actually wanting to see what happens.
Yeah.
And not every comic can do that to me these days. So, it's like I actually want to read them right now and then be like, okay, we can review them whenever, but I got to know what happens.
Yeah,
now.
I think
So
I'll
on
probably
top
end
of
up doing
there you
that too. Like I said, I'm trying to remember in my head and I can't, and that's kind of fun. Kind of like what we did for the Magic Mirrors, where it's like every time I read it, or when I read it as a kid versus when I read it as an adult, it's like you're reading it and you're like, I can't remember what happens, and you can't wait to get to the end.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I'm sure we'll review them again. And just so everyone who's watching us on YouTube knows, once we get a few episodes under our belt, I am planning on dividing them. You can watch them in order, or I'm also going to divide them into playlists. So if you like Mike Young Productions, or if you like Filmation, or if you like DC Comics, I'll start grouping them so that you could have a playlist that would play them all through. So that I'm hoping that'll make it a little easier to find since we're gonna jump around. So like for this, once we get all three reviewed down the road, they'll all be in a playlist. So if you're catching up, if you're a viewer that didn't watch from the beginning, you're catching up on this later, go ahead and check that out. You can check those different tabs on YouTube for the playlist and see if we've gotten to the other ones yet. I'm not sure I can do that so much on the audio, but I will try and link back to the earlier episodes that discuss the same things, especially for these comics. I think it'll be good for us to try and get them together once we do them. So. But yeah, so solid read. Go ahead and check it out.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can find it online or check your local comic shop. They might have some back issues. You'll probably pay a little bit, especially for that issue 1, because they tend to go for stupid rates just because it's got a number 1 on it. But
or get the omnibus, and then you can also be on board with all the other DC stuff we'll eventually get to on the show as well.
That's true.
You are going to pay a little more than that, though. That's the only thing. So,
but you'll get more, because I probably want to guess you're probably going to pay at least $20 for that number 1, and probably like 10 each for the other 2 nowadays.
Yeah, it's still cheaper than the omnibus, though, because the omnibus last I checked was, I think it was over $100. And like I said, through credit and everything else at the comic shop, I paid less than that, but it was still a decent chunk of change just to get that. But the amount of stuff you have in it.
Exactly. If you're gonna drop maybe $40 on 3 issues, you might just want to save up and buy the whole omnibus. That's the same thing I did with the mini comics. Rather than try and piece together a vintage collection, it's like, well, I'll just go grab the Dark Horse mini comic collection. So check out all those. Check out the omnibus. Check out the Dark Horse books. If you're enjoying what you see, please like, subscribe. If you feel like it, sharing it, share it. Drop us a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts on this series, what you'd like us to discuss in the future. Tell us how much you think Shawn looks like Tom Hanks. A little bit of an inside joke, but
back in the day, maybe.
Back in the day, I should. I might have to share. I might have to find a way to share that with all our viewers. So Shawn, any closing thoughts?
Honestly, no. I just if check it out. And the whole purpose of what we're doing is exposing people to all the different sides of Masters of the Universe, all the different iterations and stuff. I'm hoping that we're getting people invested in, hey, I want to check that out. It's not just about this or it's not just about that. So feel free. And I'm really excited when we get any responses back to at least tell us, are you liking what we're doing? And on top of that, if you have something specific you'd like us to touch base on and review, we'll reference who gave us the idea to do it, and we'll talk shop about it. And we're building more into this as we go too. We're going to come up with some other cool ideas for listeners. Absolutely. But for right now, throw whatever you got at us. You like it, you love it, you hate it, whatever. Let us know. So
just give us some feedback. I think Shawn pulled his headphones out, maybe. It looked pretty close.
No, that would be my cat trying to play with my classics. He's getting really antsy down here. So
all right, so I'll say, check us out on Facebook, Legends of Grayskull. You can find both of us, PM us, drop us a line, like Shawn said. Let us know what you're thinking. We'll be back soon. Don't know what topics yet, so I'm not going to say them. We'll be back soon with episode 3. Thank you to all our audio listeners, wherever you're listening from, and let us know. Drop us that line. Say, hey, I listen on Podbean, I listen on iTunes, whatever. And until next time.
Until next time.